Today we're going to take a look at the Xbox version of Neptunia Game Maker Revolution. I reviewed the PS5 version when it came out. If you're wondering about the game's story, gameplay, etc., then take a look at that video. I'll still give you a slightly condensed rundown of the game here, and I'll still try to be thorough though. You can watch or skip that segment if you want, but if you want the full details on the game mechanics and things like that, you'll find that in the PS5 review. After that, it's more about the specifics of the Xbox version, and I will say that there's some excellent news regarding the game's performance, which we'll talk about in a bit. Idea Factory provided me with the game, as they usually do when it comes to Neptunia stuff, so thank you very much. Now let's get into the story and gameplay first before moving on to the Xbox stuff. The game stars Big Neptune, and while we've seen this Neptune before in other games, the dimension Game Maker Revolution takes place in is unique to this game. Big Neptune teams up with three goddesses representing three different failed consoles. They represent the Atari Jaguar, Panasonic 3DO, and Apple Pippin. Together they create a gaming company. In terms of gameplay, you've got the typical world map and dungeon situation you've seen, in many past Neptunia games. The actual gameplay is very similar to Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters, except you have 4 instead of 3 active party members. The dungeons are like most other Neptunia games in terms of gameplay. Battle starts when you come into contact with enemies. Battle is in real time though, that's the difference here. The main point is to remember that you have to switch characters at the right time. There's a little prompt that comes up which makes things easier. Your damage multiplier increases when you do, which substantially increases damage output. On top of that, you start doing extra team damage when switching. I did notice that if you follow the prompt, you'll usually just end up switching between 2 characters. I don't know why that is, but you can also look at the bottom left of the screen to see which characters you can switch to. There's a little C icon, which I assume stands for combo. The dungeons are unique to the game, from what I can tell. I thought they'd reuse some stuff from Sisters vs. Sisters, but thankfully no, though you'll see similarities as, you may imagine there. The dungeons look pretty good, but still not as good as they did in Four Goddesses Online in my opinion. My biggest complaint with the dungeons is that the layout is wonky, or rather the layouts are wonky. It seems like they are made from modules, so you have repeating parts throughout. There's many parts of the dungeons that look exactly the same, and that makes it confusing because you're forced to run around all over the place. There's lots of doors with switches that are located somewhere else. Other times it's like a puzzle that you have to complete, like that one volcano dungeon where everything is painfully orange. And there's laser gates that have colors that correspond to various crystals. And in order to open them, you need to burn the right crystals, and then you have to transport them with the carts, like these minecart things. It really feels like a hassle sometimes, so that is not ideal. Also, there'll be people you meet in dungeons, and they'll give you side quests. And if you complete whatever it is they want, you need to go back to them, so there's more backtracking again. It's easy to get lost and confused. Some dungeons even have signs where to go, which is simultaneously funny, but strangely also not that helpful because, well, you don't always want to go, where the main quest is. What if you're going backwards, right? Another fault is the map. For some reason, it doesn't show the whole layout. You need to use the D-pad to go up and down to show the bits with elevation changes. My question is, why not show the whole floor? There's no reason, to do that. It's just you have to click and then up, 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 down, 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 and it's like, why? For some reason, this game features some motorcycle game mechanics. You can use it to navigate dungeons quicker. Fair enough, I suppose. It did make tedious moments of running around a bit less tedious. But there's also a race you can do when you explore 100% of a dungeon, and you get rewarded with items if you win against the monster there that you have to race. I'm not really sure why they included this. It's really clunky to control too, so it's not really that fun. Oh yeah, remember the whole running a video game company thing? Well, it's not just part of the story, but also the gameplay. The whole disc development thing from past games now has been changed to fit the theme of this game. So when you develop discs, it's basically like developing a game. You can hire various developers, which changes the outcome of a game. You can also observe what the market wants, which you can see in the world map. By the way, unlocking new dungeons is done in a way as if you're expanding your sales area to that region. Each area has its own stats and preferences in regards to what games they like. The games that get developed take time to make, so when I say that, I mean real life minutes. In the end, there's still items that you can equip, I was never a big fan of the disc development mechanic, and this is a way to make it a bit more interesting, I suppose. There's several other game mechanics related to the whole game developer aspect, like, for example, you can do advertising and upgrade your company building over time. After every chapter, you get a report card on how well you did overall. I find this story interesting because it takes place in another dimension. We don't have this thing going on where everyone knows each other and, we're buddies and everything. So that makes the story, as well as character interactions, a bit more unpredictable. Plus, it's nice how the story focuses on Big Nep and the 3 new goddesses. It's a bit of a different perspective compared to what we're used to. It's a bit more like the early Neptunia games, or like the first one where Neptune has amnesia and she doesn't know she's a goddess. So parts of the story, their perspective is like, more of like just the common folk, I suppose. Some other spin-offs have that too, like Neptunia RPG and things like that. But yeah, I find that interesting because usually that leads to moments where we get to see a bit more of how the game's world is, But yeah, that's the basics of the gameplay and the story. Like I said, watch the PS5 review for more in-depth info. Let's get into the Xbox specific things. Xbox ports are a bit of a trend, it seems. It's not just with NEP games, but with other Japanese series and franchises. The Atelier series is another recent example there where there was a Xbox announcement. The previous and also first Neptunia Xbox game was Sisters vs. Sisters. Neptunia Game Maker Revolution is built on the same engine. The games play and look extremely similar. For some reason, the Xbox version of Game Maker is only available on Series X and S consoles, unlike Sisters vs. Sisters, which also had an Xbox One version. The Swimsuit DLC is only a digital deluxe exclusive, which is very disappointing considering that, well, if you look at Sisters vs. Sisters, it was included in the Xbox port, but at least we don't have console exclusive characters this time round. There's no PC port currently. Hopefully that's just a matter of time before we do. Remember, traditionally, everything gets a PC port. The only games that don't have PC ports are the original PS3 games, but then the remakes do have PC ports. And Producing Perfection didn't get one either. So that means, Game Maker Revolution, as well as the motorcycle game that comes up, that's coming up, that also doesn't have a announcement yet for a PC version, but yeah, hopefully that's just a temporary thing. Sometimes PC announcements are delayed. But anyways, back to the Xbox version of Game Maker Revolution. This is where things take a bit of an unexpected turn, because this game actually runs at 4K 60 frames per second. Yes, finally. That being said, I don't know why the PS5 version can't do that, but if you want the 60 FPS experience, the Xbox is the version you want to have. Disclaimer, I don't know how the game runs on the Series S, as I only have a Series X, so yeah, keep that in mind. If there's any differences in terms of visuals and performance with those two systems there, hopefully that's something someone can answer in the comments. The 60 FPS really helps make the game feel nicer to play, especially since it has real-time combat. But even just running around the dungeons is nicer. Not to mention, you don't have the awkward transition between 60 FPS menus and 30 FPS gameplay like we did with the other versions of the game. It's also a little easier to control the motorcycle. I've noticed I'm less likely to run into enemies there. Saving your game is much quicker on the Series X compared to the PS5. On the PlayStation, it's kind of clunky how the system menu animations slow down the whole process. On the Xbox, it's basically instant. In terms of looks, I don't notice a difference between the PS5 and Xbox versions when playing them back to back, so that's good. Overall, I'm quite happy to see that the Xbox port has performance improvements, though to be honest, like I said, the PS5 version should really run at 60 FPS as well. Hopefully there's also going to be a PC version because going by the comments, there's more than a few who are waiting for it. I'm slightly torn when it comes to the simulation aspects where you build up the company. I do think the story is quite interesting. I like the idea, the setting, and the new characters. The graphics look good, the gameplay is alright as well. I do think the difficulty increase as you play is just about right. Nothing super challenging, but it's more like a laid-back sort of experience. Every new dungeon you'll notice things get a bit harder, but not that much harder that you'll have to grind for long times. You can actually just buy new equipment, then go through the dungeon normally and level up. By the time you get to a boss, you're probably strong enough to deal with the stronger enemy there. Some improvements I'd like to see is none of that digital exclusivity nonsense with the DLC. and the needlessly complex and annoying dungeon puzzles that force you to run around everywhere. You know, that could be simplified or changed up. Also, the repeating segments of dungeons isn't great either. I also think there seems to be, you know, from game to game, there's like a decrease in fan service. I think that's an integral part of Neptunia. It was so at the beginning and many of the games, but it does seem like it's toned down a bit. You know, where's the extra outfits? Yes, we got the swimsuits edition, you know, stuff, but you know, what about alternate outfits and things like that? I want to see that stuff too. But yeah, that's the Xbox version of Neptunia Game Maker Revolution. Let me know what you think. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.